Welcome back, everybody, to the Light Warriors Unleashed podcast. And I am so excited today to introduce you to Ben, who is like this beautiful soul, very much, rooted and grounded in energy in the United States. And it's actually really cool to talk because I own my naivety and my ignorance almost to facets of his life that he's lived within. He's been in the military, in the Marine Corps, moved through into law enforcement, now works in first responding and in the firefighter field. And I don't know a lot about this industry. And it was really cool to actually find out his mission through it and why he chose these industries and what he's seeing in these industries. And we deep dive a lot into suicide prevention and the dynamics of suicide moving through the collective, obviously, of first responders and law enforcement industry, but also to what they're seeing out there in the field. He talks candidly about his relationship and his marriage ending and about opening up to certain dynamics of his own skill sets that he's moving within and the next phase of his evolution in life. And it was actually an amazing conversation. And I actually can't wait to see him flourish in the world and move through the world and see what actually moves through him in this energy and in this field. And it was cool. And he corrected me sometimes in the podcast. And I love that stuff. You guys know, I'm all open for real talk, real conversations. And I own the fact that I don't know a lot about this industry. I am naive enough to grown up in a world that was sheltered from this. And I think speaking into these messages and stepping into the space to talk about this stuff is so important because awareness is key. If we don't know what's going on in our world, then we are literally naive and not able to help shift humanity. And he gives us some things to consider. How do we help humanity? And it's about becoming a better human and about connecting with people and paying attention in life. And it was so powerful. So I am so grateful to introduce to you Ben in episode 66 of the Light Warriors Unleashed podcast. Let's go and get her done. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Ben, I am so stoked, we'll say. I'm trying to use different words because I always say I'm excited because I really am. I'm excited every single time I hit record and we're here creating a podcast together. But I look forward to leaning into this conversation with you because I don't have a reference point really to military systems in the background and some of the life that you've led. And I look forward to actually discovering parts of this and to learn from you in connection with what this actually is. You are in the United States, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So are you in the actual military or are you, because I don't know a lot about it, are you in the Navy? Are you a Marine? What is your designation?
So I served in the United States Marine Corps Reserve from 2008 to 2014.
Cool.
So yeah, that chapter is behind me for sure. But like anything in life, it was a chapter that I think I needed to get to where I'm at today, and more importantly, where I'm going to be in the future.
Yeah. And let's talk about that a little bit. How did you get into the Marine Corps? How did this show up for you in your life? Who were you at the time in 2008 when you or you may have made the decision before 2008, but how did this show up in your field? And I want to chat about this. This is going to be fun.
So interestingly enough, I would have been 10, almost 11 when September 11th happened, but it was something that I was very aware of and impacted me pretty deeply. And fast forward, I was probably 14, 15, picked up the book Lone Survivor by Marcus Luttrell. Quickly realized after his description of the SEAL boot camp, I was not that guy that's I'm going to go be a SEAL, because I was I don't swim. I don't have a lot of access to water. And you read the guys that were SEALs, and most of them will be well, we started this when we were 10. I was so I'm behind the ball, but some type of military service needs to happen. So kind of funny how I came into it. So I finished high school early, followed a lot of Tom Clancy books, if you've ever read any of his fiction books.
My dad loves his books. So my dad's all in.
Yeah. So I was convinced I was going to go be a nuclear submariner. That was where I was at. I had the test scores and everything to be there. But I also grew up in an LDS household, and I wanted to serve a 2-year mission for the church. So 2008, spring of 2008, I'm up at BYU Idaho in Rexburg, and we had some family friends whose kids had gone into West Point, into the academy, then resigned their commission for 2 years, served a mission, came back. Mind you, you say you had no frame of reference for military. I had no frame of reference for military. So I was just kind of, making it up as I went along. And so I was like, well, I'll do that, but with the Naval Academy. So
Mm.
early days of Google naval recruiters. There is no Navy recruiter in Rexburg, Idaho, or wasn't at the time, but there was a Marine Corps recruiter in Idaho Falls. So went down, talked to him, and he goes, well, what do you want to do? And I told him, hey, I'm going to go nuclear submarines, officer track rather than enlisted. And he goes, well, why do you want to do that? And I explained to him, I was going to take the 2 years off service mission. And he's like, oh, you just do that enlisted in the reserves. Nobody likes officers anyway. It's easy, it'll happen, which come to find out was not nearly the guarantee he made it out to be. It did work for me. And then when he threw Marine Corps out, I was like, well, they're reputed to have the toughest boot camp for, the big 4 branches. They're obviously not SEALs, Rangers, Green Berets, any of those advanced trainings. But I was like, if I do this, then I won't have to look back and wonder if I could have done this.
Yeah.
And then being a farm kid, and after he sold me on the reserve idea, I was like, okay, well, where are the units? And he's like, well, we have light armored reconnaissance in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we have tank battalion in Boise, Idaho. And I was like, battle tanks, that's like tractors, right? And being the good recruiter that he was, he's like, oh yeah, of course, that's exactly what it is. Like, sign here.
Come get a new tractor over here. That shoots
Exactly.
guns.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So went to boot camp in 08, San Diego, California, and then follow on training at Camp Pendleton for combat training. Tank school at the time was in Fort Knox, Kentucky. Worked through all that. It was probably 9-ish months total training, and then reported to my reserve unit in Boise, Idaho, which the reserve units for the Marine Corps are set up a lot like the National Guard, that it's a weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the summer.
Okay.
And then deployments if they come up. But so I put in about a year there and then left on my mission for the LDS church, served that, and then came back, finished out my time.
And did you ever go like, what's it called? Like, I literally I have no reference point. So I'm going to be like the ignorant person here. So I would love for you to coach me because I want to actually understand. But when you go like somewhere, like, what's it called? Like you are dispatched,
like
right?
a deployment.
Deployment. Yeah. You're deployed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever get deployed in another country? Were you ever around that? Yeah.
So never deployed to a combat zone, which was, we were actually slated in my time with the unit, we were slated 3 different times to go. And then just the time frame it was, the US was pulling back and cutting personnel in combat zones. So every time we thought we had a deployment, about 6 months out from when we were supposed to start our work up, they're like, oh yeah, actually we don't need you guys anymore, so you're staying home. Went on a extended annual training, so like a 3-week to South Korea. The US and South Korea drill pretty much once a year. So got to go be a piece of that and see a little bit of Korea in that environment. So, but that was it for outside the continental United States. I mean,
yeah. So you were one of those fortunate ones that didn't have to actually go into combat zone, which is awesome for you. But do you have people that that, well, maybe it wasn't awesome. Maybe you actually desired to go and use your assets, but yeah, go ahead.
I would say the desire is there for almost everybody, right? You join, especially 2008, everybody that was joining, it wasn't the mid 90s. It was joining with the idea and the intention that you were getting deployed. Yeah. And so I would say for a period of time, I did feel a little bit cheated, right? Like you spend all this time training, like if you're on a football team and you spend all this time training and you never play a game. Then what's the point of it?
Yeah.
I would say with age comes wisdom. And that's certainly been something that I've looked back on, and in chatting with some of the guys that did deploy, I'm like, it would have been good to put those skills to the test, but at the same time, it didn't have to happen. So,
yeah. And have you noticed with people that that have been deployed, we talked a little bit about, the mental health stigmas and some of the things that are going on in the military at this moment of time, like at the beginning before we hit record. Do you find that it is a causation to more challenges mental health? Like, do you notice a trend with some of the people that you've seen come back? And just speak to that a little bit.
I would say it's not really a trend. Is hard because individuals are so unique. To say there's a trend, it's interesting to see the interplay of it and mental health in the first responder world. I think the military is finally starting to get it right. Those things are starting to be known. And we could sit there psychologically. I'm intrigued by the fact that we deal with all this post-traumatic stress now, when you look
Yeah.
at World War II,
Oh, yeah.
Korea, Vietnam, those guys came back with what they called shell shock at the time, right? But they didn't know it was post-traumatic stress, and they went back to work. There was not a lot of um, resources available to them. I actually, when I started working in law enforcement, one of my first area partners was a Vietnam vet. And you ask him, like everybody goes, oh, the Vietnam War, what a horrible thing. And you ask him, and it sounded like from his perspective, like, just it was what it was. It was,
Yeah.
there were some good
Another
days, there were some
day.
bad days, but it wasn't
Yeah.
like this life altering thing for him. And so the interplay is interesting. And back to the first responder side, I think the more I drill down into it is there's an easier separation normally for the military of that happened over there. This is my life here. So if you can get guys to break
Interesting.
into that,
Yeah.
um, versus the first responder world where, the worst call of your life might literally be 2 blocks down the street that you pass that location
Every day.
every time you go to get groceries.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm. And it's such an interesting movement because you hear a lot about veterans, when they come back, a lot of them potentially have PTSD or they have different kinds of other ailments that are moving through, but it could also be a stigma that's moving through, and that may not be the truth. I love that you brought forth that conversation about the separation, like they went somewhere to do, and it doesn't diminish at all what someone's going through, or I can only imagine what it feels like in their bodies to hear, let's say, fireworks if they were in explosions and stuff, and what that might actually trigger inside of the nervous system. But it's an interesting thought, and I thank you for correcting me and for actually stepping into that, because I like I said, I'm naive. Like, I don't know. I've never been in a military training camp. I've never held a military gun. I've never driven a tank. I don't even know what that even means. I can imagine what it might mean, but like I don't know what it means. So like, to be in these positions, to go into establishments that are rooted in the fact of we are protecting our country, we are here to serve our country and the people in it and to keep them safe, it's a powerful energy to hold.
it is.
Yeah.
And I would say that's where my motivation went to of it is it was an obligation, right? I looked back at
Right.
my family tree, couldn't find any recent people who had served in the military. And so where like a lot of the guys that I went to boot camp with, that I was with through training, they had a dad or an uncle or something, and this is just the family tradition.
Yeah.
And for me, it was right, wrong, or indifferent. And maybe it was somewhat naive and ill-informed at the time, but it was, hey, this is my payment that we have to make on freedom every so often.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate that. And obviously, thank you for stepping into the space, although you didn't get to drive your tank in a combat zone. But yeah, so like 2014's rolling around. So let's say 2013, 2014 in your world, and you said that you stopped your, we'll say contract, even though it's probably not that, but your contract with the military. So what made you choose to maneuver? What was going on within you that it was like, it's time for me to get out, or I'm making a choice, or whatever that was?
So it actually is a contract.
Oh,
It's
it is? Okay, cool.
so
Your contract ended.
perfect
See you
wording. Yeah.
later.
So your enlistment contract is for a set amount of time.
Okay.
So uh, I had decided I was going to look at law enforcement as a career field after.
Yeah.
And again, I have some really weird hangups with obligation. I'm just finding out about those now, which now I look back at my whole life and I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah, it
interesting.
is. It's a thing.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. In fact, we could tangent off here for a minute. So recently I started going through some therapy with a splankna therapist, and
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever heard of splankna.
No,
So
tell us. Yeah.
it's kind of a weird blend of Eastern tradition of the body's energy and meridian fields
Hmm.
with Christianity overlaid. That's
Okay.
the easiest way to explain it. Like
Yeah.
um, EFT tapping
Yep.
with prayer, like kind
Yeah.
of a weird mix. But and to identify emotions, and one of the emotions that came up in my deal was penance. That I was constantly making payments to try to make
Mm.
penance for something. Who knows what? Um,
Yeah.
but so 2011, 2012, I get back from my mission. Um, I'm driving truck for some construction projects, some oil field in North Dakota. It was just a good filler, right? It was decent money.
Yep.
Yep, easy field to fall into. But back to the penance thing and kind of what drew me, or the obligation into law enforcement, is right then is when we start to see the culture wide shift
Right.
on
Yeah.
law enforcement and anti-law enforcement. We're
Yeah.
talking Ferguson is happening about then. And I grew up pretty, I would say, conservative and even to the point of libertarian, very desiring a very small government. And so I looked at it and I'm like, well, are the cops doing this? Like, are they exerting authority they shouldn't?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to go do it.
In it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then either I find out the truth or I, at least then I get to go serve and get to give my part back to the community here at home. So I had, I had a list of states that I was willing to live in. Wyoming was on them. Saw that Casper,
Wyoming.
Wyoming Police Department was hiring.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'll go test for them. You know, won't make it through the first time. I had a cousin that was testing for Boise, Idaho PD at the time, and she had been, you know, working on going from an associate's to a bachelor's degree. And she's like, I'm probably still 2 years out for making their list. I came down and did really well on Casper's test, got a job offer like right out the gate. So I was like, oh, that's sweet. Like, yeah, I'll
well, you trained in the military too. It's a little bit, you know, you've got some assets that way, like, and I can understand. Yeah.
you would think, but there's actually, because I'm currently with a fire department, there's a lot more in common between fire and military than there is law enforcement and military.
Okay.
Everybody thinks like both of them have guns, therefore they're the same thing. They're not. Like,
I was
military
more
is
of a
very
physical
team driven.
asset, like of you training through
Yeah.
like boot camps and stuff. That I would assume like police academy would be the same. And I don't even know if there is a police academy, but I know there's a movie. You know,
No, there actually is. It's not nearly as physical as you would think.
No, okay, yeah. So that's thank you. That's where my imagination goes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's much more. There's a physical component to it, but it's much more books and laws and being able to apply those laws. You know, unlike attorneys, I don't get to study out my argument for a week before I make it. It's on the scene of, does it meet this statute or not? But so I moved to Casper, Wyoming, and basically the Marine Corps, like I say, we weren't going to deploy. We were winding down. 2014, Iraq and Afghanistan, even at that point, we're winding down to almost nil.
Yeah.
And it became the deal of, you know, Boise, Idaho's 12 hours from Casper. I got tired of driving 12 hours once a month to go jump on tanks and train for something I probably would never do. Yeah. So decided to get out at that point when my enlistment expired. Yeah, so that was kind of the catalyst behind that. I decided, you know, this chapter has filled what it needs to for me, and I don't see a lot more coming down the pike that I think I'm going to need. So I'm just going to get out, focus on law enforcement.
Yeah, cool. So now we're in law enforcement. We're in Wyoming, and you're doing your thing there. What's life like in Wyoming in the law enforcement?
There's no better place in the world to be a cop.
Yeah, cool.
Hugely supportive community. There's a lot of public support out there. The property crime, auto burglaries, types of that thing are pretty frequent here. There's a big problem with methamphetamine here. We kind of caught fentanyl behind the rest of the country. We joke that Wyoming's 10 years behind, and we were 10 years behind on that too. You can watch the rest of the country for good or evil and figure that in about a decade it'll get to Wyoming. Wow. And so we are very fortunate in the fact that our violent crime rate is pretty low compared to the nationwide average. Again, my conservative perspective says that's because almost everybody is armed. So there's not a lot of violent crime because nobody wants to take that risk that they might break in somewhere or assault somebody and end up dead for their efforts. But yeah,
I actually appreciate this. Like I live in Costa Rica, and I'm trying to figure out, how does a Canadian who is not Costa Rican figure out a way to get a gun here illegally? You know, like, and I'm like, and I actually, because there's a thing that happens in Costa Rica that people get robbed, and that's the thing in Costa Rica. Like, people will break into your house, and one of the houses I lived in, it happened, and I was at home meditating, and I had my noise canceling earphones on so I didn't hear them come in, and literally they closed the door of my bedroom and took the stuff they wanted. And when I came out of meditation 20 minutes later, my house was like ransacked, and I was like, so like in my mind, I'm like, I want to have it as an asset. Like, I want to actually learn how to shoot a gun and be with a gun safely and actually be able to hold that energy. But I'm like, how do I get one here in Costa Rica legally? You know, like, what does this actually mean and look like? Yeah. So go for it. comment.
I was gonna say I don't even know if there's a way, because the funny thing, I've actually looked at Costa Rica as a possible like retirement spot for me, and that's one of my
Yeah.
holdups. Is I'm like, I I was so used to in law enforcement always having a gun around me, and so it's almost a security blanket. So now I'm at the point of being now with the fire department, I can't carry it on duty. So off duty, I normally have one with me,
Yeah.
but I think maybe that's a move to be able to start to look at some of these other countries that I've looked at living in and be comfortable with the fact that maybe I just won't be able to have one, and maybe what happens happens.
Yeah. Well, you
But
can find them here. It's just they're not like, and I don't even know if there's actually a legal system that holds gun. We don't have a military, right? There's no military in Costa Rica. So it's like the peace safe country where they don't need a military, which is cool. It actually is cool. But there's ways. I know there's some people that I know that own some, and I'll not name their names. Um, but there's,
till we figure out if there
I
was a
know, I'm
process
like,
or if they just found them.
I think there's gun ranges here. I don't even know. So I'm going to start to actually like look in, and plus you can't trust Google in Costa Rica because not everything's on Google. Like you find the best places by meeting people who have been to things. Like it's actually a really community driven place to live. It's actually pretty fun to live here. But yeah, but for guns, I don't know yet. I'll let you know.
Sounds good.
I'll keep you posted. Yeah. So funny. But it's like one of those things that I never thought I would actually desire. You know, I took my RCMP certification up in Canada. I never got my card on it because I was just too lazy to fill out the paperwork. Really, that's what it was. And then I ended up moving anyways. So I couldn't even bring it really here. I guess it would show that I was certified. So maybe a clout to actually get something here. I don't know. But it's kind of like one of those things. But I appreciate those that know how to use guns and that can hold space that way. So when you say, you know, in Wyoming, most people own a gun, it's actually kind of fun to think that people will hold that protection and safety for themselves that way.
Yeah, and it is, Wyoming's kind of still the frontier of the United States. It's Alaska without being removed from the rest of the lower 48. It's a very independent group of people, very friendly and willing to help, but also the expectation is people stand on their own 2 feet here and
Love it.
and handle their own business. But yeah, so moved down here, was gonna originally, my thought was, because my tank unit had been in Boise, Idaho. My cousin was trying to get on with Boise PD. I was like, this will be perfect. I'll be a cop for 2 years in Casper, lateral transfer to Boise.
Yep.
Because lateral transferring in as an officer, especially at that time, I mean, at this time, law enforcement's hurting so bad for people that
I can
it's
imagine.
pretty easy to get a job
Yeah.
within law enforcement now. There's just not as much competition for it. But at that time, lateral was the way out of it without getting a bachelor's degree. It was the way to get into Boise PD, was to come with some experience in lateral in. And then towards, I'd say 2.5, 3 years into living in Wyoming, I met my now ex-wife, and all her family was here. All my family was scattered all over. So when we got married, gave up the whole idea of Boise and was like, Wyoming is home now.
Yeah.
And then by the time we got divorced, I was so rooted here that I'm like, I'll just stay where I know.
Yeah, I'll just stay where I am. I was just going to ask you if you were still in Wyoming, but obviously you are. So so you were in law enforcement, doing your thing, having a great time, you know, being in a community that's tight, moving stuff through, figuring out the methane, fentanyl works of art that are happening in Wyoming. And like you've transitioned since then. So what happened in your field of like, why did you shift gears? And you said you're at the fire department now, or in like the first responder stuff you wanted to talk about too. So like, tell me about the process, what went through your life at the time.
So there's a few little things to kind of give context to it. And to give context to how I understand it now versus how I understood it then.
Yeah.
So very shortly after I came off field training with Casper PD, like a month and a half, 2 months into being on my own, I wound up in an officer involved shooting, meaning guy pointed a gun at us. I shot him. He died. Psychologically, honestly, there were calls that affected me far greater than that. Yeah. But because of that, and as a new cop, it was interesting that I would say at the time I felt like I was getting a pass. Like my career became pretty easy. It was a good clean shoot. meaning it met all the legal parameters. It was, legally justifiable. But normally the new guys in every other call they go to get a little more heavy scrutiny. And I almost for a time felt like guys were like, oh, he's been in a shooting. Like very few cops have, like, he's good to go. Like, so I
Wow.
had to figure out a lot of the other stuff on my own, because there's just this expectation of like, oh, you've been in a shooting, so you know how to investigate a drug ring, you know how to do a domestic violence call perfectly. And it is just this, there was, I would say for a little while I almost resented it, because I'm like, I didn't get the scrutiny that I wanted off the top and learned, and I had to kind of teach myself that. And then like people are giving me way too big of a, oh, I don't know how to put it,
like clout or whatever. Like, it's
yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's actually just, I don't know, about a year ago, I was sitting down with one of my friends that's still in law enforcement, and he's like, yeah, but you were a good cop. And I was like, well, yeah, but would I have been without that? And he's like, it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
the ultimate of it is, and as I come to more in my life of seeing that everything happens for a reason and everything pushes us to where we need to be, I guess I don't resent that so much anymore. So fast forward 5 years into the police department here in Casper. So that's a local municipal for the city. It's a city of about 60,000. We were running about 100 officers. Culture within the department from the administration side was just awful. Loved the guys I worked with, but the guys at the top were bad and getting worse. Just to the point that it wasn't fun to come to work anymore. There was some, I would say, some strife within my marriage, not as bad as I thought it was. We'll get to that, because that's another interesting piece. But I was like, maybe it's caused because I'm so stressed out at work, so I'll switch to the sheriff's office, which handles the county, the unincorporated, the rural areas. Their call load's lower. I can spend more time, if it was on a night shift. My wife was a paramedic for the hospital, so she was on night shifts a lot for them. And I was like, if I'm a deputy, I can just swing by the hospital some nights and chit chat for a few minutes, because of that building time in a relationship type of thing that I wasn't really good at. And on the police department side, we were always too busy call volume wise for me to really make an effort of that. So started going through the process. Already knew a bunch of the guys with the sheriff's office, so that process went pretty quickly. And then 2 weeks after I swore in for them, wife came to me and said, we're not good. We haven't been for a while, so we either need to fix it or get a divorce. And I said, well, how do you want me to fix it? Typical guy deal, right? Like, just tell me what you want,
and I'll fix it.
Yeah, we're fixers. Tell me what you do. Well, I don't know, was the answer. And early during the first year of our marriage, we had done some couples counseling just to work on some communication stuff. And I was like, well, do you want to go back to counseling? Like, I have no stigma, no problem with that. And she's like, well, we already were there and now we're at this point, therefore it didn't work. I'm like, I don't think that's how it works, but whatever. And
was she very masculine driven too? Like, because she's obviously in a paramedic position where it feels like it's very energetic, like masculine, because she's got to be on all the time. So
yes,
did she bring that home as well into the relationship? I'm just curious.
She did. No, it's interesting, because now, like, looking back at it with all the information I have now, I'm like, man, I could have done so much better if I had the information I had now.
Yeah, of course. Then. That's what we always say.
But we learn it for a reason. And just, I got to put this caveat on, we're still actually civil. She's still in town. She manages a paramedic program up at the college now. I'm actually getting ready to go be an adjunct instructor up there on my days off.
So cool. Yeah, great.
We're still civil enough, but yes, to your question, very masculine driven energy, but it's interesting because, like, listening to Sean and Sachs talk about it, and the masculine will take over for the feminine until she feels safe.
Yes.
And I don't know if I ever provided that fully enough for her to feel safe, but then there was still that feminine energy still crops up even in females driven by the masculine, and it crops up at the worst possible little insecure moments at home that then threw me for a loop, because I'm like, this is not who you are. Like, what's going on here, when truly it probably was exactly who she was. It just,
she didn't get to show it to you before, or
correct.
It didn't come out.
It's not what she typically did. So the whole conversation around divorce accelerated very rapidly. I mean,
Mm.
she brought that up middle of December. We filed for divorce the day after Christmas. Um,
Wow, like really intense. Yeah.
yeah. And again, part of that is I didn't see and treat the feminine. I saw the masculine, and I knew that once she had her mind made up on something, because I had watched it through our whole relationship, that there was no change in it. And so
Yeah.
when she said, "This is happening, are you going to file the paperwork or am I?"
Mm.
I at that point just shut down, stopped trying, and said, "Let's get through this as friendly as we can. Like, we'll write our own paperwork. We'll sort out belongings and everything. Like, I'm not going to fight over it. We're not getting attorneys involved." We had no children at the time, which was very fortunate,
Yeah.
um, because there was nothing worth fighting over.
I
Um,
can only imagine, what that is like for the kids too, and that dynamic. So yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I have a brother going through it right now, and
Mm.
it. I
It's tough.
consider it a huge blessing that everything we had were like it's just stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we had a couple dogs, but they were hers prior to the marriage, and so that was, she even told me, she's like, "That's the only thing I'll fight you on is the dogs." And I was like,
Yeah.
"They were yours before. Like, why?"
Why would I
Um,
do that? It's really funny. I was with a man for about 4 years, 5 years. We moved to Ontario up in Canada together from Manitoba. And when I made a decision that we were separating and leaving, I was like, all I'm taking is my shoes and my clothes. That's all I'm taking. You can have all the rest. I don't even care about any of it. Like, this is all I'm taking. And my mom got mad at me because she's like, "You gave him the vacuum I bought you for Christmas." I was like, "Mom, I'll get another fucking vacuum. Okay, chill the fuck out, relax." Because
yeah, no,
I just needed to get out, right? I was like, I need, and I later realized he was a narcissist and all this kind of dynamic. And when I actually like cut the cord, we were living together. So it's really hard to be in a house when you're separated in the same house. Luckily, we had 2 bedrooms, but we only had one bed. So I literally slept on an air mattress that kept unflating every single night. I'd wake up on the floor. But I was determined to leave this relationship. And later I found out he was a narcissist, like understanding narcissistic behavior and how he was passive aggressive and how he emotionally abused me all the time when I didn't have a knowledge to, because I wasn't in awareness of that. And I was like, "Mom, you just need to realize I got out. Okay. Like, I got out. Like, now I'm no longer there. So just chill out. We'll get more vacuums." Like, I'm like, right. But some of the things, like, like people worry about, I'm like, I got my high heels. We're good.
yeah.
Like,
And at the end of the day, it's just things. If there's no kids, it's just things, and
yeah. It's
things
just
can be
things.
replaced.
Yeah, totally true. Totally true. Sorry, I digress. I just wanted to insert a really funny random story.
No, no, by all means. Um, and so find myself at the sheriff's office,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh, well, the whole plan was like that this was going to work better with a relationship that no longer exists." And so
Right.
there was some questioning, because I had actually looked at the fire department. I got my EMT, my emergency medical technician certification,
Okay.
just before going to the sheriff's office, because the fire department was getting ready to test.
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, I'll do this," but then I'm like, "No, I'm not quite done with law enforcement. There's something still there that needs done, and I still need to
Mm.
be there." So jump across to the sheriff's office, do 3 years with them, and then basically the reason of the switch, and I think you had asked this earlier. So law enforcement here is on a 20-year retirement. So once you hit 20 years, you can draw a pension, which is like 50% of what you're making for the rest of your life. It's
Yeah.
pretty. It's not huge money, but
It's
if you
decent.
start at 23 like I did, you can at 43 go start a new adventure on half your pay for the rest of your life. Like, pretty sweet gig.
Yeah.
Um, but I had watched too many cops that I knew hit like year 12 or 13, and they just didn't love it anymore. They didn't love coming to work,
Mm.
but they're like, "But I have to stay because I'm over halfway there. I'm over halfway there.
Yeah,
I
that's
got
the
to make
thing.
my 20."
Yeah.
And that's like, I had some friends in the fire department. Um, and our fire department up here, we're all hazards. So we're EMS calls, we're structure fires, we're hazardous materials, we're rope and technical rescue. So looking at it, I was like, there's so many cool things you get to do and get to train on. I was like, plus I look at all the firefighters I know and they're all happy all the time, and I look at all the cops I know and they're all pissed off all the time. So if if I'm going to keep saying like, "Oh, yeah, firefighters have a better gig than us," maybe I should just go do it. And
Yeah.
caught a lot of flack from guys I work with for the same reason, because you're 8 years into it. Why would you, like, why would you leave? You're almost halfway. You're almost halfway to this magical pension. Like, it's good, but it's not that good. Like, it's not
No.
worth. not loving
Mm.
doing what I do.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate because at the time I still loved it, but I was like, I don't have 12 more years left in me as a cop.
Right.
I don't, not 12 happy years. So I'll go be happy over here and I'll try this. And when I came aboard the fire department, one of the captains uh, goes, well, so you did 5 with Casper PD, 3 with the sheriff's office, so 8 total in law enforcement. So you're sticking around here for about 2. I was like, I don't know. Like, I may stick until retirement, but I was like, nobody has offered me enough money yet to own me.
Yeah.
Nobody
Mm.
has offered enough for me to sign up and say, regardless of what happens or how I feel about it, that I'll do 20 years, 25 years, 15 years even. And I told
Yeah.
him, I was like, it works really good for me now. I think I'll probably end up working out till 50, which is the pension for them. But if not, like, no big deal.
Hmm.
There's 1,000 other avenues to take. And I don't think so. I'm Christian and I don't know your listenership or you in particular, but I do think there's a life after this and that we get to account for what we did. But I don't think God, like, I don't think high up on his list of questions is, did you complete a whole career in one
Did you
career
get
field?
your
Like,
pension? You
yeah,
know,
did you get to a pension? Like,
let me check my
like,
checklist up here in heaven. Did you get your pension?
yeah,
X. You know?
yeah, yeah. You worked all the way to a pension. And,
Yeah.
and what I was finding is there was such a community service aspect of law that I was excusing myself from doing good on my days off because I'm like,
Oh.
I'm fatigued. Compassion fatigue is a big term they throw around up here, but I'm so compassion fatigued from the day to day, like, but I don't need to do good stuff for my neighbors or my friends or my church on my
Yeah.
days off because look at all this good I already do for the community. But
Right. It's interesting thought process. And I love that you brought that up. I can understand how that would be. Yeah.
and I think I've seen it a lot in first responders as a whole, like tremendously good human beings, but they just as a whole, we have a hard time wanting to engage on our days off,
Mm.
um, because that's what we spent all our days on doing is engaging and solving the public's problems. That's that's really what it is, more than shooting guns and driving cars fast. That's how they sell it as a cop. But really, it's your more of your time is spent because some parent is pissed off because this parent was 10 minutes late on a custody exchange and they want to talk to a cop about it, or this neighbor is pissed off because that neighbor is playing music way too loud for the 3rd weekend in a row,
Yeah.
and by goodness something better be done about it. And it just it leads to a lot, and I would say it's almost a cumulative post-traumatic stress side of
Mm.
it, of just getting
Yeah.
worn down, of solving everyone's problems day
Well,
in day out.
yeah, and I play in the world of energy, right? So each person has an energetic. So, and especially when you guys are getting called in, there's a disconnect in an energy. Someone's doing something to someone that isn't in alignment with the purity of light, let's say, right? So
Yep.
whether it's that neighbor not being respectful, or that parent not being respectful, or all the dramatic stuff too, like the shootings and the stealings and all the other dark stuff that's happening in the world. So like you guys take that on. And every day you're in that, right? Like I can only imagine what that feels like for you.
Yeah, and it's I would say there's some of it that's the same on the fire department deal. We'll take a quick dark turn.
Yeah.
Wyoming has always runs in the top 3 and normally number 1 of suicides per capita in the United States.
Wow, really?
Um, there's a lot of people here that take their own lives,
Mm.
and that is when you talk about the energy and taking it on. Because like I've tried to reason through, why do we see post-traumatic stress in first responders? We live in a more civilized and a better world than we ever have. And I kind of came to the realization, 3 months ago, we had a newer firefighter on than me, and we had just ran a suicide that was a gunshot wound to the head, which is pretty typical in
Really?
in Wyoming because of the mass availability of guns.
Of guns? Yeah.
And we were talking about it just because there was some stuff that didn't. It was a little odd compared. It was definitely a suicide, just a little bit odd with the amount of blood and some things that are not typical for what we see.
Yeah.
But being the newer firefighter, I felt like I had to justify to him, like, hey, I've seen enough of these. And so I started adding up and I was like, I've seen well over 100 gunshot wounds to the head. And I think that's where we kind of miss as a culture, because as first responders, we want to look at it and go, well, life is so civilized and good, but how many how many of those instances, or even let's take gunshot wound to the head out, but how many unattended deaths does the average human, even 200 years ago, would they have seen? They would have seen their family members, maybe their friends, so maybe
Yeah.
3, 4, and we're out here running 4 or 5 a month
Wow.
per person, maybe 6, 7, depending, just kind of on how it breaks, and it just comes to, I think the biggest step is realizing like, hey, that's not normal, but also
Yeah.
my that's not my life. It's not my emergency, it's their emergency. This is my job.
Yeah.
And gaining that separation, somewhat like the military is able to gain when you can step back and say that was over there, this is over here. First responders need to, I think, take that step back and say, this is work. And kind of the realization I came to, because a couple years ago I was getting pretty fatigued of going to them, and the realization I came to is this bad stuff in the world is going to happen
Yeah.
no matter what,
It will.
right?
Yeah.
If
It's
I
sad to
leave the
say,
field,
but it's true. Yeah.
yeah, if I leave the field, it'll continue to happen.
Yeah.
If I stay in the field, it'll continue to happen. So
Yeah.
then the decision comes of, I just need to know when my cup is full and either find a way to discharge some of that negative energy, some of that weight,
Yeah.
or just get out, right?
Yeah.
And that is the message that I've had to try to hammer home to a few of my cop friends that I've talked to, that have talked about having suicidal ideations themselves and just being done with it all,
Mm.
and having to tell them like, listen, this is not a lifelong contract signed in blood. If this is not good for you and your family anymore, get out and go do something else.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they bring up, well, yeah, but this stuff will still keep going on. So if somebody's got to see it, it might as well be me because I'm already in it.
Mm.
And I'm like, but it doesn't. It doesn't.
Wow. This is powerful stuff because it's like we have a capacity we get to hold in whatever way that is, right? And then we get to the full top of our capacity. And that's where these decisions start to play out, where people think the only way out is by leaving the earth plane or taking their life, or the only way out is this way or that way. When if we can diminish the capacity and pull out the air out of the tire, let's just say, so they can actually start to breathe again and actually see life more clearly, whatever that is. And like you've learned through the years, like you just mentioned, that there'll be times when you're tapped and you've got resources to untap yourself, whether that's martial arts or working out or going on walks or taking 3 days off or whatever it is for each of us. We have to really understand and lean in. And that serves not just in the wheelhouse that you work within and all of the industry that you're in. That's in all life. That's in everything that we do. Like from entrepreneurships to everything. Like I think we all need to really start to pay attention and realize where's our capacity and when are we at our capacity and how do we then decrease this energy inside of us? Yeah.
Yeah. And there's two ways to help with that when we start to hit our capacity. It's either we stop putting in
Yeah.
or we learn how to take some of it out, or both,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Both can be the answer.
Yeah.
But one or the other has to happen, or we hit that point. Um,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's, sadly enough, one of the guys I worked with, he was a sergeant of mine and a good friend of mine. He took his life. It was right as I was making my change to the sheriff's office. So 2018, 13,
Wow.
14-year police officer, decorated, entire community loved him. And it was too much and he didn't know how to step out. And knowing some of his backstory, he was going to get out of law enforcement, and then
Mm.
some of his superiors talked him into it and were like, listen, whatever we have to do to get you to stay because you're that important to it. And just not being able to put that down. And I
Right.
was listening to I can't even remember who it was talking, but they liken suicide to if you just gather up your friends, family, and everybody that you're close to, and then you strap a bomb vest onto yourself and you walk into that room and detonate it,
Yeah.
because it affects everybody. And
Yeah.
that's I would say I'm a big advocate for suicide prevention because of seeing so many of them, right? You see so many of them happen, and what the person who's going through that doesn't see, that the first responder does, the counselor does down the road,
Yeah.
is that effect that comes out, that you haven't removed that pain, you've just split it up and put it on different people.
Everybody else. Yeah. It's intense and it's one of those, and it's rampant in the world right now. It's actually, I think since all the COVID stuff happened, it's accelerated so much. Like they were talking about, the health dynamics, and I watched some studies go through Canada because that's obviously where I lived at the time, and the amount of people they're like, oh, we're saving all these people from COVID, but there is the amount of mental health and suicides were through the roof compared to before because people are isolated now and they're not in like all the things, right? It's just, it hurts my heart center to feel that someone doesn't have something in their life to step away from that, and that's their only reason to get out, like I'm just like, it just hurts my heart, really. So I can only imagine what you see. Like I just don't even know what that is.
And I don't know if there's an easy answer, but I think the answer is human connection, right?
Agreed.
Most of them that we see, it's some feeling of isolation for
Yeah.
some reason or another. And as a culture, I would say worldwide, we become so much more disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
We have Zoom. I can sit and talk to you here in Costa Rica, but when's the last time I talked to my neighbor?
Right.
When's the last time that I said hi to somebody walking down the sidewalk on my street? Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's a big piece of it, that we're seeing this trend upwards. And it's intriguing to me too. We're the only creature in the animal kingdom, if you want to call it that, but we're the only creature that we think ending our own life is some form of solution.
Yeah.
Um, it it's just it's intriguing. Maybe we're too smart for our own good, right? That we can worry about tomorrow. You don't see the elk or the bear going and jumping off a cliff because it's winter and they don't have food,
No.
because they're just focused on finding food.
Yeah.
And I think we as humans sometimes get so wrapped up in the future and worrying about what could go wrong, might go wrong, or if it doesn't get better, that we don't just focus on what's in front of us, of
I
let's just
agree.
try
Yeah.
today to survive
Yeah.
and to make it better. And the rest of the animal kingdom has that. And like, super cool that we have the ability to reason. That's why we're able to create and do so much more than the elk or the bear.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we also, it's that double-edged sword that self-awareness,
Mm.
can bite us if we don't have it under control and in perspective.
Well, and you made a really great mention about technology, and it's like, yeah, it's amazing that we can talk, and you're in Wyoming and I am in Costa Rica, and like we can communicate this way, but it's also almost the detriment of us having communication that like such instant gratification with Google and our phones that we've lost that connection and touch. Like, where is humanity coming back into its roots? Like, where are the camaraderies? Where are the fires, and having people around a fire communicating, in the world? And we're, a lot of us are moving back into that. And I think that we're realizing like planting our own food and becoming sovereign and understanding the skill sets of like what it used to be a human before all this technology. And not to say I'm going to diminish the technology and we need to go back to primal arenas, but maybe that would help reset some things. But actually like understanding who we really are as humans, and we need that connection. Like, who have you hugged lately? Like, I greet every single person that I meet, even if I'm just meeting them at like yoga for the first time, in a hug always. Like, I just am like, let's connect together. Like, it's like, hey, my name's Karen. I'm like, oh my God, hey, I'm Colleen. Let's hug. Like, and it's like, how do we bring that back into an experience of like connecting with people, because I think it would help change a lot of things.
Yeah, and I think, and maybe technology itself is not the detriment, but it's the use of it. It
Of
goes back
course.
to the conversation you had of desiring to have the responsibility sufficient to have a gun, right? Guns, to me, they're not good or evil, they're a tool.
They're too.
Technology is not good or evil, it's a tool, but I think
Yeah,
we've tended to use it for bad. The default for technology is we use it maybe not for bad, but for distraction. And
absolutely.
and maybe that's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty powerful conversation we're talking about here. I love it. And I love that we got into this space, happened upon it. Like God created the opening for us to actually communicate about this, which I think is really cool because you see it all the time. It's a visual for you. Like, it's not like you can pretend it's not happening in the world. Like, you get on calls that take you to places that this is happening for all these people, this disconnection, this isolation. They think that their choice only in life is to leave. Seeing what you've seen over the years, what do you have to say to humanity in connection with that? Like, how can someone like me help serve this mission of us helping others this way? And maybe I can't from where I am because I'm in a completely different place, because that's not really happening here the way that it's happening in North America. But I don't know, just what's on your heart to kind of share in connection with that?
Be a good human and connect.
Yeah.
It's care about people, which I'm sure you already do, because I
I
can
hope
feel
so.
that. Yeah, that people are a priority. But
Yeah.
if we make people a priority, we start to spread some of that trauma back out. We start to spread it back to where it was, that those traumas were within people's communities and they were relatively rare from my career field, versus they are frequent and very concentrated because we don't take care of our own anymore. We've outsourced it.
Right. Yeah.
We don't. One huge thing, working with some of the Mexican immigrant workers as I was a kid growing up on the farm, one of the things that I hugely admire about that culture is the parents typically move in with the kids when they get old.
Okay.
And in civilization, I don't know about Canada, but at least in the US, it's the parents go to a home because the kids are, not that they don't even want to, they're too busy with their own
Yeah.
lives, and they haven't figured out a way to make that space and that time to be able to do that. But I think that's what starts to help solve humanity, is if on a very localized basis we start to build that connection back to our families. Sure, maybe not everybody has great families,
Yeah.
and I'm a big believer that family is what you make it. It's not blood. But if it's not your blood family, that doesn't just mean like, oh, my family's crappy, I don't have to care for anybody. You find somebody
Yeah.
to jump on and care for, and it's a realization I came to a year or two ago, because I had mentioned other first responders coming to me, and there's probably over the course of the last few years, half a dozen of them that have come to me, and that we've had very deep talks about their own struggles with suicidal ideation and their own struggles with all this. And there definitely was a time there that I'm like, I don't know how I became the go-to guy to talk to, but I don't want this. Like, I just want my own struggle. But then there's that belief that if that's what's coming to you, that's what you've been prepared for, and that you're put in that space for a reason.
Yeah.
No matter how unqualified I feel for that, no matter how unqualified I feel to sit with you on a podcast for an audience that I don't know the demographic to, I don't know what they're going to be listening for.
Yeah.
But there's a reason. There's always a reason that drives us to where we're at, and what we go through today is what is driving us to where we need to be tomorrow.
Totally agree with you. And like, I follow the poll, like, when, so for those listening, we're part of a coaching group together. That's how we got connected. And I made a post in the group that said, hey, I'm looking for some podcast guests. I want to open it up to the Lion's Den because I think there's some cool people here that got cool stories. So Ben jumped on and was like, I'll be on it. I was like, okay, let's do this. Right. And that was like, I live and breathe in the energy of, like, if we can call it God, universal alignment, divinity. I woke up that day, it says you need to make a post in the den. And I said, okay, I'll make a post in the den. And so those that were inclined came forward to say, I got something to say, whatever it is, because God needs to speak through me today in connection with something. So we stepped into this platform to be together, to share in some form of capacity that someone needs to hear, or maybe 5 people need to hear, or maybe 100 people need to hear this message that's coming through you today, that I get to calibrate with, and bring out into the world. And that's the whole mechanism of this collaboration energy within the world structure. And I think the more people can come together and help serve in a certain way, the more we get to serve in a certain way, So yeah.
And the more we share, I think we find out that we're not that different. That
Totally agree. Yeah.
that the experiences and whatnot are so similar. And that's when you made that post. So to Colleen's comment, we were both at Lions Den Live, and William Lamb, who was one of the speakers there, talked about starting to write down your goals and essentially future casting, which one of those was that I wanted to start in public speaking towards this end, to first responders, to mental health, to just overall connectedness and and putting your own mind right and becoming the best version of yourself. So when you made that post, I was like, I don't know if I fit on this podcast, but that looks like the first step. That looks like the first step that jumped in front of me
Yeah.
is get out and let your voice be heard. And I still struggle with it. I still struggle with the imposter syndrome, but also the putting it out there. I work a couple side jobs, and fortunately what we have going on today got canceled anyway, but my boss was trying to book me for it. And I was like, nope, I've got an appointment. Didn't tell him it was for a podcast because I wasn't ready to just put that out there yet. But that's at least I made the step of coming on, and maybe that's the next step, is that I get to say, yeah, I'm going on a podcast. And when he says to talk about what, talk about what I need to talk about. I don't know.
Yeah. And I love the I don't know part, because that for me is like where the juiciness lies, right? Like I'm not like there's some podcasters out there that are like, these are the specific questions. This is what I want to talk about. And I'm like, let's figure it out as we move through, because that's way more fun, like, and I love to have fun. Right. And I appreciate your heart though. Like, I just really want to like express that out, that like you stepped in, and like part of what I always talk about, and I always say this, is courage, having the courage to show up, having the courage to speak your truth, having the courage to express it, and to talk about things that are like, this podcast isn't like the airy, fairy, fluffy podcast about come get some happiness. Like, we're talking about suicide. We're talking about, PTSD. We're talking about, military and guns. And we're talking about a lot of dynamics that are not like the airy fairy, come get your heart filled energy, but they are in a certain way where it's like, this is truth too, right? It's part of who we are. It's part of a mechanism. It's moving through the collective. Yeah.
They are, because as long as they hide out in the dark, they'll never be solved until some light gets shined on them. And as a culture, we get comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
It's still uncomfortable for me to say that one of my good friends killed himself.
Yeah, I bet.
But the more we say that, and not he died unexpectedly.
Yeah.
No, he was going through some shit, and he made probably the wrong decision to deal with that shit. But putting myself in his shoes, maybe that was the only way he saw out. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about the hard things so people can see the after effects of that, and maybe it gives them a second thought and begs them, hey, stay around just a little bit longer because it gets better.
And that's really powerful place. So we've been chatting for a while, and I'm sure we could hit up all these other conversations, because there's so much dimension to who you are and what you're here to do on the earth. But I'd love to hear, what now? So you're in this industry. You may get to 50 there. We don't know. Like, what are you up to these days? Like, what's happening in your field? Like, where's your focus? Like, I just love to find out, like, you've been through this transition in life. You live in Wyoming. You love Wyoming, maybe. And like, what's going on? Like, what's happening next?
So there's a few dimensions to that. There's what's actually like concrete happening right now. There's what I would like to see happen, and then there's the direction I'm trying to push it.
Bring it all.
So the what's happening right now, it's the universe is crazy, because I ponied up, said, hey, I'm going to Lions Den Live. I've never been to something like this, but I want to be better. And the week leading up to that, the flow state that hit in my life was crazy. I had a refinery here contact me about doing some emergency medical service ongoing training for them as a contractor, which is going to pay better than any part-time job I've had. Oil has a lot of money, it turns out, and they like to throw it around. And why not to me? So
why not?
Right, that's a like concrete happening. To branch into that, the absolute cool thing, if I could do anything in the world, I would be probably building out retreats for the ultra wealthy for disaster, apocalypse, end of times, whatever you want to call it. Just because that intrigues me. And interestingly enough, there's a thing or two maybe moving into my space on that, again, without me even looking for it. And then in the where I'm trying to push, so just took my ex, Twitter, whatever we're calling it these days, but my ex and my Instagram, from my own name to Blue Collar Stoic, and trying to get out and post some content. And it's still in its infancy, so if you look at it today, hopefully by the time this podcast airs, there will be more content there. But because the posting content is something I'm very uncomfortable with, but the principles behind Stoicism are something that come very naturally to me now that I've started diving into the books. I'm like, that's stuff that I've been saying for years. And so putting it out in a digestible format to the person just trying to slog through life that doesn't have time for those big thoughts, to try to get out just little blurbs and add value into their life, and maybe they catch on to something that then lets them go through an upgrade. And you brought it up, like, maybe I'm here till 50. I really hope not. And not that I don't like what I'm doing, but I really hope that I've found a better way to serve humanity.
Love it.
In a bigger way than what I'm doing now. Like, what I'm doing now, sure, it's fine. It's a good placeholder.
Yeah.
But and especially after Lions Den Live, that was the big call for me, was to go bigger. That I need to go bigger in the quest to serve and to help lift.
Love it. Sorry I didn't get to see you there. I was there too, but there's so many people. I was like, oh shit, too bad we didn't get to meet up.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's a couple people that, like, I've hit up within the den, and I'm like, were you at Lions Den? Like, oh yeah. I'm like, how did we not? I'm like, well, I guess that's 1,300 people, but
yeah, there's a lot there. Yeah. So, okay. So that's the space that you're at right now. So what's moving through the next, well, is there anything else you want to share there? Because I don't want to make sure I diminish anything.
No, I think that's about
okay.
That's
the
it for
next
now.
piece. Yeah. So where is it leading to? And then the other, like, big adventure, we'll say.
It's leading, ultimately, I would say the short term would be independent enough. I've got immediate family going through some stuff, and to be able to reach out and lift bigger than I'm able to now, that would be like the ultimate right in your face. Like, this is why I need to do this. What it's leading to is an interesting question, because that's a question I've been struggling with. I know the general. I know that it's to lift and to move. For years, I've set a career in politics. I don't know that I want to get into that field anymore. And if I do, it'll be on a very short-term targeted basis. But again, it's going away now from, like, I have to be in politics, to how do I lift the community I'm in and make them better and more sustainable as a community. Maybe it's through politics. Maybe it's through something else. Maybe it's through building something so big that it's a philanthropy take, right? And that's to the comment of, like, the dream job of building out retreats and resorts for the ultra wealthy. The point in that would be to partner with some of these great organizations. Mighty Oaks is one that does a lot of work with first responders and military for mental health, and they do it at these nice resorts and retreats. So if you could give that to somebody, it's a tax write-off for them, so it's obviously great. But it helps serve both the person wanting their retreat, but it serves a bigger community by making that available to a wider swath of people.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see kind of where you're moving towards. And I call myself a soul mission activator. So my job or mission on the earth is to help people really align what their mission is on earth. So for me, I'm like, it's like juicy conversation. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens. Like, I'm like, because I love watching people step in and then embody all that they're meant to do in the world. And it shifts and changes. Like, we grow and expand and we learn, and then we're like, oh, we're over here and we're moving pieces. Like, it's never a linear line, but it's going to be fun to see you bloom. And now obviously we have a footprint together. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch Ben and see what he does. Like, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's super exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah, it should be. It should be exciting. And I think that life is meant to be lived that way, like more joy, more pleasure, more excitement, more connection, more laughter, like just bringing that together to live and be in all the ways that we show up in life. I think it's important. So yeah.
And flow. Yeah, it's interesting because I've hit a couple times in my life like a definitive flow state, and it's unlike, there's no way to describe it. There's no experience that can compare to it, that where just things are just happening. They're just falling into place.
Yes. And I love living life that way. I live and breathe by, like, the message, like my intuition or God, like God's messages. I wake up in the morning, I go, where do you need me to be? And literally that's how I live my life. And now I have a brand online and I do programs and stuff. So I've got some infrastructure that can hold that, but like, that's how I live. Like, that's how Costa Rica came about. People are like, how'd you get there? I was like, I woke up one day and God was like, it's time for you to move to Costa Rica. And I was like, oh, okay, when am I leaving? Like, literally that's how it happened. And I'd never even been here. And people are like, you've never even been here and you moved? And I went, yep, that I just follow the call. So it's been a year. Literally, it's been a year a couple days ago that I've been here. So totally different transition. I understand why I'm here now. Like, once you get here and you ground and you learn a couple things and then you go, oh shit, that's why I'm here. Like I get it,
Yeah.
but I don't get the whole landscape of it yet, because how can we? We're living day to day and we're living in the flow and we're just following the call. So it's fun.
Yeah.
Totally fun. So, anything else you feel like sharing today? Because we've been chatting for a while, and I know that we can definitely talk forever if we wanted. I'm sure there's so much that we can learn from each other, but I'd love for just to pass you the mic to close off. Like, where do you want to leave this in whatever capacity you feel like mentioning?
The closing thoughts, I'd say probably, especially with us going dark and talking some about suicide, is for everybody that listens to this, you matter. You matter, and it gets better. There is no solution in taking your own life. And if that's something that anybody struggles with, reach out, get help. It may be tough, but you'll find somebody that can help, and life gets better. Jordan Peterson, when he said that paradise is a place where we just play a game and the game just gets better and better, that's where I'm starting to feel life. But you got to stick around to see the better.
Yes.
You got to stick around and keep building. But I think I can make that as a promise to everybody. Life gets better than wherever you're at now. Even if you're in a really good spot right now, I'm at a spot that 10 years ago I couldn't have fathomed being at.
Good for you.
But I know that in 10 years I'll look back at this and be like, wow, that was just the beginning.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it's kind of fun to play in life that way. Like I'm at a really cool space in my world now too. And I'm just like, and it's only getting better. It's only accelerating, and I'm only getting deeper connected with myself and people around me and all the dynamics of the impact I desire to make in the world. And I'm like, I had a photo shoot done the other day, and the photos that came out, I went, oh my God, that's her. Like, that's the one I've been imagining for the last 3 years of my life that I would become. And this photographer found her, and I went, am I her? Like I'm just like, and the question comes through, and it's a beautiful place to be, because the things that you've been imagining are coming true. And I'm like, wow, okay. Yeah, I get it. So fun. I appreciate that. I leave that message. I get interviewed a lot on podcasts and stuff, and I say that often. It's like my closing thoughts most of the time. I just want everyone to understand that they matter. And I love that you brought that around. I was like, oh, we're in the same alignment. It's so fun.
We're in the same spot. Yep.
So good. So we're going to share obviously your X links. Any other links you sent over to me, we'll share them in the show notes so people can get in touch with you and contact you and maneuver with you if they choose to. Because I don't know, maybe someone's going to reach out and be like, hey, can this, or I heard your podcast and thank you so much for being this, and if you didn't send me any links, then I'm going to tell you to send me some, because I don't check.
No, I sent you links to X and Instagram.
Yeah, okay, good. Good. Because I want people to be able to get in touch with you, because you never know what just happened here. Maybe because you were so real and vulnerable, someone's life shifted because you said something. And I want people to be able to access that and be able to contact you. And obviously the podcast is going out everywhere. So yeah, and I'm only going to encourage people, just like I always do, share it, send it to a friend. Maybe someone needs to hear this. And when you're listening to this, you're like, oh my God, that would be amazing if Billy Sue or whatever got this podcast episode. Send it over there, because each light matters. And the more we can get it into the hands of the people that desire this information or could use it for benefit, the more power and impact we get to make in the world. So yeah, Ben, thank you so much for the time and being here and opening up your heart to us and talking about the things that, may be scary sometimes, but I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, everyone. And we will see you guys again on the next podcast. So very real, very raw. We didn't, cap any conversation off. We stepped into the space to serve you guys, and we may have triggered some people in this episode, and I understand and get that. But if you are triggered by the conversations that we just had, then inside of that is something in you that is desiring to come up to be healed, looked at, or honored. So I'm only going to encourage you to step into that space. If you are feeling Ben and you want to have a conversation with him, please reach out to him. All of his contact details are in the show notes. And we're just going to ask, like I always ask, is help us share this out. Tag us on Instagram, tag us in the space of things, allow us to be seen by your people, send it to a friend, And let's get this word out into the space, because the Light Warrior movement and us shining more light into the world isn't just because of me or the guests coming on this podcast. It's because of all of you stepping into the energy, holding a vibration, and us moving through our sovereignty together. So love you guys. And thank you guys all for being here. And here's to the next episode.